It started with the biggest pipe bomb the FBI had ever seen.
There is a bomb in Centennial Park. You have 30 minutes.
It ended in a dumpster after the largest manhunt in American history.
My knees knocked so hard that I was about to answer them. That's how nervous I was.
Eric Rudolph and the rise of anger.
Domestic terrorism has been metastasizing across the country for a long time now.
True story, true crime, true consequences for us all.
American Shrapnel, from award-winning journalists Becca Andrews and John Archibald, two-time winner of the Pulitzer Prize. Now available wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, it's Paris. You know I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me, serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
Buckeye Talk is about to begin. Hey, 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 come on in.
Welcome back to Buckeye Talk. I'm Stephen Means. That's Stefan Krajisnik, and that is Andrew Gillis. We talked with the quarterbacks and Ryan Day and Ross Bjork on Tuesday afternoon. I don't really want to get into the Ross Bjork stuff here, Stefan. It's very simple. Ohio State's doing a bunch of stuff to improve the game day experience, and we'll see how that plays out. It's very, very early because we're playing Texas week 1. We texted a lot of that stuff, 614-350-3315. I'm just not sure what the analytical take is there. It's more just like, cool, you're doing things. Good. Keep doing things.
It's Ohio State acknowledging that they have a lot of noon games, and you have to try to do different things to improve the environment because it's not going to naturally be there like it is for night games.
Yeah.
Whether it's towels, whether it's celebrities and alums ringing the bell before the game, whether it's, scarlet outs and blackouts and, a helmet stripe, coordination theme, whatever you want to call it. Like, they're doing different things. And it's a good mix of like the tradition of Ohio State game day experiences with like new stuff. Nothing. I don't think any of it is like extraordinary. Now they are doing like different intros for Brutus Buckeye. If you were at the game at Oregon last year, you saw the different things that Oregon did with the Duck, and he came out on the motorcycle and he did a whole like Greatest Showman thing, and like Oregon does a lot of cool stuff with the Duck. Ohio State's going to try to do that now. Like if Brutus Buckeye like zip lines into the stadium or like parachutes into the stadium, that will be interesting and different. But outside of that, I don't think anything is going to really be like, oh, wow, this is completely different than anything I've ever seen in sports.
Yeah, you don't think if he pops in on a motorcycle, that is pretty cool?
I thought a motorcycle was pretty cool, but it's not like it's not something we've never seen before.
I know, but it's just it's a guy with a big head on a motorcycle.
That's what Rufus does.
I just said it would be cool. It just wouldn't be new.
Like I think last year though was the nice schedule for them because they played at Oregon, like Stefan said, because like they're also doing that song. They're like they added some song about Ohio that they're gonna play. Oregon did that. They had the Duck thing. Penn State was like they wanted a night game and they got a noon game, so they did the helmet stripe. I think they're incorporating things that they saw last year. They're incorporating some of the stuff that they had for their own playoff game. It was just like last year, I think, gave them a lot of runway to be like, hey, that was pretty cool. We should do that again. Or, hey, that was really cool that this other team did. We should do that. That would be neat. So I think it was a nice little runway.
They're doing something. Regardless of what it is, they are doing something. And there has been a feeling that the environment at Ohio Stadium hasn't always been great. Their home field advantage isn't because it's crazy, though Indiana players will tell you differently. It's that, one, Ohio State's good at football, so it's hard to beat good teams at home. But big games, people get up, right? The Indiana game was pretty rocking. The Ohio State-Michigan game was pretty rocking. And the Penn State game in 2023 was pretty... When there's a reason to get up and cheer, Ohio State fans will get up and cheer. They also, if you don't give them a reason, won't always do that. Now, can you expect the Grambling State and Ohio games to have the same environment as a Texas game, a Penn State game? Probably not, but you could at least encourage it. And so that's what I do like. That if you're a fan, you heard an athletic department is trying versus we show up, it's noon, that's that. And we play Hang On Sloopy between the third and fourth quarter, and then we ring a bell after the game. They're trying the entertainment element of that. Well, also, I asked Ross Bjork about this. There's two things at play here. You're trying to maximize the game day environment, but you also have to make money. Why? Because you have to pay for sports right now. And you also have to NIL, and you also have to renovate things, right? You can't have one without the other. So what does that mean? It means they're putting suites on the field level. It means there might be a VIP donors lounge coming to Ohio Stadium very quickly here in the near future. You're trying to balance both of those things of maximizing the experience and the environment that is college football, but also you're trying to throw a party, but then also make sure you can afford to throw the party. And that's essentially what Ross Bjork's job here is for as long as he's going to be the athletic director. That was 5 minutes longer than I wanted to go on that. Let's talk about the quarterbacks. Stefan, what'd you learn about the quarterbacks?
I learned that it's an important week for the quarterbacks, and we're maybe like a step away from being a step away till Ryan Day naming a starter. Initially when it happened, I thought Ryan Day didn't really tell us a ton about the quarterback competition. As I went through and listened to it, like, I do think he did provide something. Like, I think he told us that essentially by the end of this week, he thinks someone will separate themselves at least a bit. And you guys have both, in a video we did on YouTube, alluded to kind of, Ryan Day using verbiage similar to like, this guy is taking command of the room, or this guy is starting to separate himself a little bit. And whether that's Julian Sayin, whether that's Lincoln Keenholz next week, it's kind of setting up for next week's press conference for Ryan Day. He's going to maybe give us a sign of who the week after that will be named a starting quarterback. So he referred to it as, for the golf fans that are listening, like moving day on the PGA Tour. When you get to Saturday, he referred to it as moving day, the third round, because you kind of go into Sunday knowing, okay, these guys are, based on how they did Saturday, they're legit contenders to win this tournament. These guys, how they did Saturday, kind of put themselves out of the mix, and maybe they're just competing for a top 10 spot at that point. It feels like when we get to Sunday, it could be like, okay, moving day has passed. Ryan Day feels like Julian Sayin has a 2-stroke lead going into next week. And by the end of next week, we can call that the fourth round. They know who the starting quarterback is. So it's an important week, I think, for the quarterbacks. And it sounds like there's a little bit of urgency from Ryan Day to be like, okay, the first, 3-4 practices were good first 3-4 practices were good in terms of getting comfortable, getting back into the swing of things, getting back in pads, all that. And now it's like, all right, let's like enough development and both these guys learning like who's our starting quarterback and like who's going to show themselves this week. So it does seem like there is some urgency from Ryan Day to be like, I want to know in week 3 of camp and 3 weeks until the Texas game, who the leader in the clubhouse is. And then the week of, that would be what, like the 17th, the week of the 17th.
Yeah.
Or week of the 18th, I guess, you have an idea of who is the starting quarterback. And then the week of the 23rd is like, all right, like full go, Texas prep, Julian Sayin, Lincoln Keenholz, you've got most of the reps with the ones because you are our team starting quarterback against Texas.
You know what I learned? Ryan Day keeps finding new ways to tell us that he really picked up golf as a hobby this summer.
It's impressive. And if golf were to settle who is the starting quarterback, Lincoln Keenholz, it sounds like would win with some relative ease.
We were talking with Lincoln after he got done, and I was like, what's your second best sport? What's the sport you think you could have 100% played Division I? He said basketball, which, yes, he can win me a dunk. I actually believe him. But then we were joking about his golf game. He said, yeah, when I'm done playing quarterback, I'm going to go on the PGA Tour. I don't know what's happening here, but golf has become a fundamental part of this team. Started last year with Emeka and all those guys golfing. I got a question for both of you, and whoever rings in first gets to answer first. Ryan Day has sometimes, you can tell when he's challenging somebody in the media or using us to get a message across. Sometimes it's a kick in the butt. Sometimes it's a challenge. Sometimes it's encouragement. And we saw that a lot with Jelani and how he would often talk about him with that. Does it feel like so far in the 2 times we've talked with Ryan Day this fall camp that he is challenging one of these quarterbacks, specifically Julian Sayin? Because, again, we're going to talk about this as if like we've all decided that he's going to be the starter, and if Lincoln is, we'll have that conversation. Does it feel like his messaging is coded in some version of I would like to name you the starting quarterback already. Do what you need to do so we can do that. And over the next 10, you see that start to happen. And on August 19th, Ryan Day names the starting quarterback. No, August 18th. Because I'm looking at the schedule. They're going to have their first scrimmage this Saturday. They're going to come out of that scrimmage. We're going to talk to Ryan Day on Monday, and I'm sure he's going to have some things to say. And then they're going to have their second scrimmage on the 16th. And then that Monday, we're going to talk to Ryan Day. Do you feel like that's the timeline we are on right now of the messaging for Ryan Day is, I would like to name you the starting quarterback. You need to allow me to do that by what you do over the next two scrimmages of fall camp.
I think that is definitely part of it. I think part of it is Ryan Day challenging his guys by using maybe the last guy. I believe it was his first press conference where he got asked like how Will Howard kind of changed what he's looking for in a quarterback. And he kind of talked about the little things that Will did and the leadership that Will had and how Will was able to keep control of the team and how Will was able to move the offense. I think he had the quote about like, just kind of keeping things kind of flowing and keeping things moving. I think he's challenging them in that way. Like, I think he's saying, guys, we both know you could play, but we saw last year that when the tough gets going, like you need somebody. You need somebody, you need something to kind of show up. And I think that is what he's asking here for, because this is the tough spot because, Julian is in his second year in the program. And I think we all kind of put him on the inside track right now. But, Lincoln, I mean, he was late as an early arrival, right? He did not have that spring. So he showed up, really in, the fall of 23 and didn't have a ton of time. And he was also kind of buried on the depth chart the whole time. It's hard to command leadership at the quarterback position when you are not high up on the depth chart like that. So to me, I think he's saying, guys, like, we know you can throw the ball. We know you can run. We know you can, make throws and run the route or run the reads through your head and kind of process things and understand what you're seeing. And we know you're going to get better. But there's another part of this that I think Ryan Day learned in the 2024 season, specifically from Will Howard, in that there's an on-field aspect to this, but I think he's wanting to see an off-field aspect as well.
So what else did we learn today? I feel like this was a weird time to talk to the quarterbacks because it was like, I don't think Julian or Lincoln said very much.
I think that was why we talked to the quarterbacks today. I don't know if it was a weird time for them. I think it was a weird time for us to talk to the quarterbacks. I think they wanted us to have that.
Yeah, but you still can learn something. I'm not saying they had to sit here and tell us what their scheme was or anything like that. But did either one of them say anything of note Tuesday afternoon?
I thought, I'm actually going to go back to something Ryan Day talked about because a lot of the quarterbacks gave us the day at a time, gotta improve this, gotta improve that. But one thing when they talk about like having to improve each day goes back to something that Ryan Day, I won't say like called them out about, but like pointed out was, Stephen, you had mentioned on our last pod kind of this general concern about, maybe not concern, but kind of like the general sloppiness of the first few practices. And like some of that is going to happen, like running backs fumbling. It's like, I mean, these guys, running backs don't get hit a ton. So it's like, when a guy like Turbo Rogers is in his first camp and he fumbles, it's not like the end of the world. It's like, this is just, he's getting used to what comes with the progression of a college preseason camp. Ryan Day did point out the quarterbacks need to take better care of the ball. And there were like one of the practices we saw, Julian threw a pick to Davison that was kind of, left you scratching your head a little bit. And there have been decisions at time that leave you scratching your head I literally started scratching my head there, of like these quarterbacks. Like we talked about how good the secondary has looked and the turnovers they've created, but there's two sides to every practice. And as good as the secondary might be, there have been some decisions by the quarterbacks that have left you curious. And they're also, with Julian saying, I think, he's 6'1", he's not the smallest guy in the world, right? Like I think someone joked with him.
6'1", 210.
Yeah. Someone joked with him during the presser of like, everyone kind of talks about you like you're 5'5", but 6'1" is also not the biggest guy in the world. And there have been some tip passes at practice, and like those can easily lead to interceptions. It's not necessarily a bad read, but it can happen. So Ryan Day kind of saying they have to take better care of the football. That has to be a major part of the day by day, one moment at a time, get better each day. Like Julian saying, Lincoln Kinos have to be telling themselves like, all right, tomorrow when I get back for practice, how am I going to get a little bit better? How am I going to develop a little bit more? Taking care of the ball is probably a big part of that. So I don't think it's not something that scares me. Like, I'm not super concerned about it, but it is one thing where when I listen to that, the players give very generic answers about having to get better each day. Like, that is directly something that might actually be something they have to get better at each day.
Do you think this is progressing the right way?
I think so.
I think so. It feels like Steven, this is my third kind of quarterback, quote unquote, debate that we've had. 23 was McCord Brown. Last year it was wasn't really a debate. It was more Howard, but it felt like there was like a different tone to it. This year is maybe a little bit more like 23 was, but it feels like maybe every year that we've had this, we've asked that question, like, is this how this should go? Is this the correct path? And I think yes, because I'm not sure that there is like a set, this is the exact formula that you want to use. It feels like things are moving in a direction like Ryan Day kind of laid out today of just like Stefan said it perfectly. We're a step away, I think, from being a step away.
Is this you think this is like 2023?
I think it's more similar to this year than it was last year. I think 2023 is more applicable to the 2025 quarterback competition than it was the 2024 quarterback competition.
Why?
Because I felt like last year it was Will Howard's like at the end of the spring, where like it was like locked in that it was Will Howard's at the end of the spring. Like I remember at the beginning of spring practice, we were kind of like, it's kind of weird that Devin's taking the first snap. But then even then we were all like, they didn't bring in Will Howard for nothing. Like Will Howard's going to be the guy. And it felt like in the summer and everything we had heard was just, like it's Will Howard. Like, don't even stress about it. This year feels like a little bit more open, even if we all do think it's going to be Julian.
What's making it open though? Because you're saying that, and if we all marked down what days we thought, but I think now we're all kind of circling that August 18th date, which is 3 days after Will Howard, simply because, that's how time but it's not, it's essentially the same timeline that Will Howard was on in terms of 2 weeks out from the football game, you named your starting quarterback. That's the timeline that Justin Fields and CJ Stroud were also on. 2 weeks out from when you play your first game is when you name your starting quarterback. We thought it was Will Howard's because he was a transfer fifth-year senior with 4 years worth of experience. We all think it's Julian Sang because he's a 5-star recruit who, at bare minimum, we all thought maybe he might be the backup quarterback by the end of the season last year. I don't know if I agree that it's 2023. I think this is a lot more similar to last year than the language is sometimes letting off, simply because the conversation isn't a career backup who's in year 3 and a guy who has been a starter for multiple seasons. This time around, it's the 5-star recruit in year 2 and the career backup who's entering his 3rd year. I don't see a difference other than the guy we think is going to be the starter being a little bit younger, so he's making a few more mistakes in practice than the older guy is going to make.
Yeah, I could see that. I think I'd probably agree with you because like Andrew had said last year, you left the spring and it felt pretty obvious that Will Howard's going to be the starter. Well, there hasn't really been a moment where we've seriously considered Lincoln Kienholz to be the starter since the spring. So like Julian Sang has had that. I guess like I'll tie this into another thing that we heard today that I thought was important or at least interesting is this actually when we spoke to Billy Fessler. He talked about how regardless of like how long this competition goes, regardless of who the quarterback is, like Ohio State's not changing its offense. Like this is Ryan Day's offense. This is Brian Hartline's offense. This is Billy Fessler stepping in and it being part of his offense. If that's the case, is there a path to Lincoln Kienholz being the starter? And the reason I ask you that is because like player profiles and player skill sets, I think often get tied into like, if Lincoln Kienholz is the starter, there's got to be more design runs for quarterback. And you got to change the offense a little bit if Lincoln Kienholz is your starter. Isn't that what we would have said about Will Howard, though, when he left Kansas State? Like, this is a guy who's going to run the ball a ton. And the offense still ended up being, pretty balanced, and Chip Kelly plays a part in that. But like Will Howard was still like, he was looking to pass to Jeremiah and Carnell and Emeka before he was, looking to run the ball. So like, I guess my question is do you think Lincoln Kienholz can run Ryan Day's offense? And if you don't, then is that another element of like, or Julian Sang was always going to win this job because he's more of the profile to run Ryan Day's offense?
Justin Fields and Will Howard ran it more than CJ Stroud and Kyle McCord did as starting quarterbacks. Justin is the only one where it was like significant. Oh, I'm running the ball. Like it's part of the offense. They ran some QB power every so often with Will Howard, but the bigger thing was he would scramble and take off and go get some yards, right? And then in key moments, they brought it out, right? He had the run against Penn State at the end where in any other situation, he's going off for a touchdown. But in that situation, he slides to put the game away. They had the QB power for a touchdown, but he fumbled the ball at the end zone. You had what they were doing at the end of the national championship game, right? He ran in the games where you had to unload the clip. Oregon, both times he ran. Tennessee, he ran a little bit. Michigan, he ran until he got hit in the head. Indiana, he ran a little bit. But it wasn't like Justin Fields ran every game. So do I think Lincoln Kienholz can do what Will Howard did last year? Yes, I do think. If he somehow wins this battle, do I think Lincoln Kienholz has 80-plus carries in 2025? Yes, because it's going to have to be the thing that keeps people from just overloading on C.J. Donaldson and James Peoples. But do you need your quarterback to run 80 times this year? I think it was a need last year when Emeka was your only established receiver to start the season and you were allowing JJ and Carnell to ease into things, but also you had two elite running backs and you had to keep them from overloading on those guys. I think in a world where you've got three elite receivers from day one and a tight end who, if Andrew has his way, is going to have 800 catches this year, I think the arm talent is more important. The question then, Andrew, becomes when does all the other things happen? And maybe we're in that part of the fall camp where that is available to happen. Because again, back in the spring, it wasn't a reasonable expectation to try to claim this job the way it was set up. I don't even know if the first 4 days of practice, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then Tuesday, the fifth day, were set up in a way for anybody to go claim the job. When the first 2 days you're not in pads and you're installing, the third day you are in pads, but you're still in install. Sunday is the first day you really got after it and were hitting, and now you're in it. You've moved into the hotel for the next 3 weeks here, and you're in it now. Maybe hey, when's somebody going to win the starting quarterback job? Maybe that runway started Tuesday with practice. And so now we can start to get a gauge on whether or not either one of those guys are starting to really take command of the huddle and take command of the locker room. Because Tuesday's practice was the first time that was even a reasonable expectation, which is when you start to get into, okay, Ryan Day saying, what's the identity of our team going to be? Well, I don't know if you can fully form that until you know who your starting quarterback is, Andrew, because these guys, their skill sets aren't exactly, they're not night and day, but it is a little apples to oranges.
Yeah, I said that in one of our videos. Like, the offense is going to be kind of majority the same, I think, or you would like it to be the same, kind of whoever it is. I do think there are maybe certain, plays and things that you want to start to put in that Lincoln likes maybe more than Julian, that Julian likes more than Tavian, like whatever you're going to go. Like, let's say it's Julian. There are plays that, are game plan specific that, okay, this is what he likes in this situation, or this is what he feels comfortable with. And that might be in direct opposition to some plays that Lincoln has. That to me is, I think, why you're starting to maybe get towards that deadline of like, we got to have a starter sooner rather than later. And I think that 18th, I forget the schedule that you said earlier. I'm not going to actually repeat it. But
we're going to talk the schedule for this week. There's position group things the next couple of days. And then Saturday, they're going to have a scrimmage. We'll talk today about that scrimmage on Monday. And then it'll be the same thing, position groups and all that stuff. They'll have another scrimmage on the 16th. And then we'll talk to Ryan Day Monday, August 18th. I think at that point, that's the safest bet to be when Ryan Day names the starting quarterback.
Yeah, just because that's going to be your Texas week. Your install for Texas, that's going to be when you start to plan everything out with, especially for a game of this magnitude, 2 weeks away, you want to have enough time there. So that's going to be the week to me where it's like, there are parts of this, like you said, it's not night and day where it's like, you're not sitting there talking about a statue in the pocket and then, your next guy in line is Lamar Jackson, right? It's not that, but it is a dynamic that I think we do kind of have to, just be aware of just there's going to be elements of a game plan that are a little bit different. And I think you want to get to that sooner rather than later.
I will say the one thing with Justin Fields is that he did throw a hell of a deep ball. I don't know where Lincoln Kienholz is with that. Although Will Howard wasn't the best deep ball thrower either. So
not until it mattered most. At the end there. Okay.
That's true.
I feel like we don't necessarily have answers about the quarterback, but we at least have an idea of.
I think we're a week away from not a starter being named, but us knowing who the starter is going to be.
Like officially.
No, I think Stefan is saying like now we're like. Yeah.
Right. I know what he's saying. It's going to go from us going, yeah, we think Julian Saint's going to be the starting quarterback to, we know Julian Saint's going to be the starting quarterback.
Julian will be named the starting quarterback on whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Then that's, I agree with that. I don't know if that was informative or not. 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $3.99 for that. Let's have a break. And then there's some housekeeping things we got to update, plus a short conversation about the offensive line here on Buckeye Talk. And we're back here on Buckeye Talk. Stephen Means, Stefan Krajisnik, and Andrew Gillis after talking with Ryan Day and the quarterbacks after Ohio State's 5th day of fall camp. Quick update. Patrick Houston is practicing. He's just not full go yet. We did see him. The brace he's wearing right now isn't the same bulky brace he was walking around with on Friday and Saturday, which I think is a good thing, which means he's doing some things. Probably individual drills. Ryan Day said that he will be full go in team drills in the next 48 hours. So everybody wipe their forehead and say, phew, phew. They still got to figure out the defensive tackle depth, but at least the top of your room will be okay. Edric was also joking around with me. I'm not going to say what he said because it just isn't great for always what he said, but it was very, very funny. I like Edric a lot. Ryan Day also just decided to drop the bomb that Austin Saraveld's been repping at left tackle a little bit in fall camp. He also said that Ethan Inyawa has been repping at right tackle and a little bit of guard, which is different than spring, Stefan, because in the spring, he was literally just left tackle while everybody else was moving all over the place. I don't think any of us think that. We're going to get to the Texas game, and Ethan Inyawa is not going to be their left tackle, and Austin Saravel is not going to be their right tackle. I think from left to right, Ethan Inyawa, Luke Montgomery, Carson Hinsman, Tegra Shabola, and Austin Saravel is still the group we think is going to be the starting unit. But why is this? There's two reasons for why this is happening. There's we went through what we went through last year, and we don't ever want to be in that position where we don't know what to do next ever again and have to spend a month figuring out our offensive line. And there's also the fact that you guys saw CJ Hicks speed rush Ethan Inyawa and went, Colin Simmons is going to do that on August 30th. That might be a problem. Which is more prominent in this conversation for you, Stefan?
I think it's the latter.
Okay.
I think maybe me more than you thought Ryan Day was pretty intentional in what he said. I think Ryan Day is always very intentional with what he says at a microphone. At media days in Vegas, when he mentioned Will Smith Jr. being a standout, when he mentioned the leadership of Carnell Tate and even Bennett Christian, I don't think that stuff, he doesn't coincidentally say a lot of things. We saw Austin Saravel rep at left tackle along with every other position basically outside of center early in the spring. Since then, we've mostly seen him at the guard spots and at right tackle. And in the practices we've seen since camp started on July 1st, it hasn't been any left tackle, at least from the practices we saw. So for Ryan Day to come back and mention left tackle for Austin Saravel felt like a blast from the past, felt like something we heard in March, but haven't really heard since then. So for that to happen, 2-3 days removed from some pretty rough moments for Ethan Inyawa, I think was a mixture of, hey, maybe we should reconsider Austin Saravel at left tackle, and also, hey, let's start challenging Ethan Inyawa. Because Ryan Day's challenges to Ethan Inyawa early on were, he just needs to get in shape, he needs to fix his body, but he's this team's starting left tackle.
Mm-hmm.
Now it sounds like, hey, we got options, and your body's ready to go, but if your production doesn't match that, we've got options. And I still think, if you were to ask me today, project starting 5 for the Texas game, it's left tackle Inyawa, and then Luke Montgomery, Carson Hinsman, Tegra Shabola, and Austin Saravel. But if we get to Texas week and Ryan Day's still talking about Austin Saravel working at left tackle, I'm open to the idea of rehashing that. He very much posed that as Austin Saravel's working at left tackle, and then Patrick Murphy of 247, who had asked the question, was like, wait, did you mean right tackle? And he was like, no, I meant left tackle. And he was like, and then he kind of backtracked and was like, well, we learned last year that everyone's got to work everywhere. And in my head, I was like, yeah, that's true. Everyone does kind of work everywhere. But then I was like, we saw Austin Saravel work at left tackle early in the spring, and we haven't seen it a lot since then. So why all of a sudden on August 5th is Austin Saravel popping up at left tackle when on July 31st, on August 1st, and on August 2nd, we didn't see Austin Saravel playing left tackle. At least not that I remember.
Andrew, are you in agreement with that? It's more of the latter than the former.
Yes and no. I'm in agreement with the fact that I think there was many reasons that he did that. I think the first thing is, I think they're open to the idea of maybe our best combination at tackle is Saravel and Moore. Maybe that's what, maybe that's the ideal combo that they would want. I think they're open to the idea of screwing with Texas's head. And I think they're trying to maybe get it out there of like, hey, the next time these people, like when we were leaving practice on Saturday, I looked at Stefan and a couple other people. I said, so the next time we see these guys play football will be August 30th against Texas. And everybody kind of went, yep. And I went, cool. Well, I'm going to be real here. With us not there, Ryan Day could say Caleb Downs is lining up as the slot receiver.
Believe him. No. If he says that, I'm going to believe him. We're going to
Bolitnik off.
Yeah, Bolitnik. But like, I think they're open to an idea of change. I think they're open to the idea of, maybe Texas has some questions and maybe like I told this.
What is that? Colin Simmons is still Colin Simmons.
Yeah, Colin Simmons is Colin
Simmons. What does it matter if Seravil's at left tackle or Owen Yawa's at left tackle or I'm at left tackle? Colin Simmons is still Colin Simmons.
That's why I push back on that. Like that. No, but also this isn't 1997 where a guy just plays on one side of the defensive line and that's that. Right. If there is a serious issue with Ethan and Yawa with the speed rush, and again, we're basing this off of he was a very large man when he first got here who struggled with that at Rice, mixed with he's here, the guy in the defensive line room who, at least from an athletic profile, not saying he's as good as, but the athletic profile of why he might be good, best in lines with what Colin Simmons brings to the table. Like if CJ Hicks were on scout team, he would be playing Colin Simmons the week of that game prep. And we saw that happen to Ethan and Yawa, and it maybe raised some alarms in your head. If I'm Texas and I see, they just put him on the right side, guess where Colin Simmons is going to go every 3rd and 7? So it's
but that's an easy in-game adjustment.
Well,
like your game plan with Colin Simmons doesn't go out the door when you say, "Oh crap, Ethan Owenyawa's on the right side instead of the left." Okay, Colin Simmons, you're going against him on the right side.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They're just going to move him over. So like, I don't know if that is part of this equation. I think I'm just on the opposite side of you guys, where I think some of this is random that they started doing this, and it's also granted we're not in there, so we can't like fact check this, which is why he didn't say it last week. He said it once. We're not allowed in the building anymore. I do think that last year, and this can tie in the quarterback part of this too. I think so much of last year, because they won a championship, is influencing everything Ryan Day does now. Because that won him a championship. The whole conversation about the command of the huddle, why Julian Sand got 7,000 leadership questions, right? Why Lincoln Keenos is getting leadership questions, because that's what Will Howard was. Yes, Ryan Day said his size was what made him special, but it was also his leadership. He was also 23 years old when he got here, so he came here and got the business, right? He wasn't a young kid trying to figure it out. He was trying to figure out Ohio State, but he knew how college football worked already. I think that is influencing the quarterback battle. I think the fact that last year they spent 45 days from the Oregon game, because he said it at Big Ten Media Days, we thought going into the Oregon game, we knew who we were and what our offensive identity was. All right, and then Josh Simmons breaks his leg. Okay, we still think this is our identity. We just got to replace Josh Simmons. Okay, then now at Indiana. No.
Zen Mahalski.
Zen Mahalski doesn't look great against Nebraska, and also he gets hurt. Okay, well, we got to figure this thing out again. Okay, we used the Penn State game. We figured out how we're going to run the ball now. We had to move Donovan out the left tackle, and Carson Hinsman's playing left guard, but center to right side is still good. This is what we're going to do. Oh, wait, 2 days before you play Indiana, your Remington Award winner busts his Achilles. So now you got to spend another 4 weeks figure it right. I felt like from the Oregon game on, Ohio State's offensive line was in scramble mode, and as a result, they didn't know what they were offensively because they didn't know what they couldn't do, and it took up until they had a month to prepare to play Tennessee to really settle in to how they were going to do things, how they were going to run the ball, which is why we saw a lot more gap scheme, a lot more counter versus inside and outside zone, because that's what worked best for that group. So if there is an element of that trauma in your head, you're probably thinking, for better or for worse, we probably should work everybody everywhere for as long as possible. Because what if you get through the Texas game and, God forbid, Ethan and Yawa gets abducted by an alien? Or Carson Hinsman gets abducted by an alien, all of a sudden Josh Padilla is your starting center, or Tegrid Shabola goes down, right? You have some combination of what you had last year. What you don't want to do is feel like you are spending a very important time in the season trying to figure out what Josh Padilla, what Luke Montgomery, what Carter Lowe, what Ian Moore are good at, because you spent 9 months putting a game plan around 5 guys who don't exist for you anymore. I agree. There is an element of Ethan probably maybe had a bad practice at some point, and so now you're testing to make sure you have all your I's dotted and your T's crossed. But I also just think that they won a national championship doing something last year. So if it ain't, I ain't gonna say it ain't broke, it don't fix it. But if it got you a ring one time, maybe it can get you a ring a second time.
Yeah, like I said, the first reason maybe it is, maybe they're just like, hey, maybe this is the best tandem for us. If it's Unyan was their third tackle and it's Searveld and Moore. Like I said, I mean if a head football coach can make another coach say we have to consider this possibility for 8 seconds, like coaches are wired to be like, that's a win for us. If they have to look at who Ian Moore is, like they're nuts. They're Looney Tune like that. So like, I'm not saying it like Stefan like rolled his eyes. Like I'm not saying that like Stefan's necessarily wrong.
If I told you that Texas's second cornerback is going to be replaced by their third cornerback, what does it matter? It's Jeremiah Smith.
Yeah. But you also, I mean, like, I think the angle that I'm trying to like just lay out is like, you want to know who these people are. Like you want to know what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, what their tendencies are, like if you can help it. So like, I think just kind of throwing some dirt on that to just say like, hey, maybe you never know. I think the depth part of this is something too, because this is the only chance at the year that you get to do this, right? Like when Ohio State's getting ready to play, Washington, and I guess that maybe that's a different example because they're coming out of a bye week, but even still, when they're getting ready to play Washington on the Monday and Tuesday of that week for practice, they're not going to be like, hey, you know what would be fun today, guys? Phillip Daniels, go play right tackle. Just work in at first team right tackle all week and see how it works. Like that's not how the season goes. Like when you get to the season, it's like the ones get the majority of the reps, then the twos get their reps, and then you have scout team. And like that's kind of the way that you do it. So this is your chance, right? This is your idea of, hey, look, let's build up Searveld at tackle and everything like that. And I guess the last point, it's an injury conversation, but it's also like we keep mentioning Anyanwa, like, oh, like if somebody gets hurt, if somebody blah, blah, blah. What happens if you get to halftime of the Texas game and Austin Searveld just can't hack it at right tackle? What's your plan? Because I think Steven had it laid out perfectly. It took them a little bit to figure their plan out. Okay, what happens if Tegra Shabola regresses and all of a sudden you need a new right guard? Okay, is your best tandem at that point Searveld guard Moore tackle? Like, is your best tandem at that point what? I don't know. And I just think having a counter punch for this goes wrong, we have an answer. That goes wrong, we have an answer. X, Y, Z, PDQ, LMNOP, all these answers, all these things go wrong. Having at least a semblance of an idea of what you can do, whether that's a dude needs out for a series, whether that's a dude's out for a game, whether that's a dude just gets out there and stinks up the joint. Like, you gotta have your answers ready to go. So, like, to answer your original question, I kind of agree with Stefan, where it's little column A, little column B, but I also think there's just, like, a lot of reasons that he can just get out there and say, hey, we're doing this, we're doing that, we're doing this, we're doing that. And kind of all of them make sense.
I think Ohio State's probably as well equipped as anyone to, hey, this guy's not playing well against Texas. Let's make a change, because the last time they played Texas, they had 3 guards. So like they've done this against Texas. They did this against Tennessee, Oregon, Texas, Notre Dame, arguably 4 of the, whatever you want, 6, 7, 8 best teams in college football last year. So like I think that's Ohio State's pretty well equipped to, hey, if this guy stinks up the joint on August 30th, you can make a change. They don't got to wait until halftime. Ryan Day might just do it in the middle of a play if he has to, because that's how comfortable they got with it last year. I just think that I thought it was very intentional by Ryan Day that after we saw Ethan Owenyawa have a pretty rough practice, to casually bring back this idea of Austin Searveld at left tackle. If we saw Austin Searveld playing some left tackle the last time we were watching open practice, I wouldn't think anything of it. We haven't seen Austin Searveld play left tackle since early in the spring. So for Ethan Owenyawa to struggle, and then the next time we talk to Ryan Day, he says that, I think it's probably a challenge to Ethan Owenyawa, but it's like, it's not nothing to me.
I think that goes back to the thing earlier I said of Ryan Day can sometimes use the media to get a point across. And I'm wondering if this is a challenge to Ethan and Yawa of you better bring it.
Is this what are you saying? Like this is like one of that? This is like Ryan Day's like, hey man, this isn't Rice. Like this is Ohio State. If you have a bad practice, we will replace you if you need it.
I think a lot of the spring was like encouraging Ethan Onyanyawa, basically being like, hey, if you change your body, like if you do all the right things this offseason, there's your job. And now it's like, all right, dude, like the fun story of transfer from Rice gets his body right in the offseason as a starting left tackle for Ohio State quickly turns to, hey, you better be good enough to stop Colin Simmons. Otherwise, this feel good story isn't gonna get to a second
I'm gonna ride Pine for that game against Texas.
Right.
Well, no, it's just I don't think it's that. There's an element here of if he's not good, they might lose the game.
Yeah.
And you're right, Stefan. The tone has changed. You want to know why it's changed? Because we're not 40 days from the game anymore. We're 25.
Well, the tone has also changed because we're not like, I'm sorry, like the championship celebration's done now. It's done. It's officially the 2025 season.
Yes, that's the focus now. And so you're right. The thing you wrote about, like the move it thing. Like, I don't play golf, so I don't know what the heck any of that means. But the idea of like you're in it now. I genuinely, you know what my relationship with golf is? Growing up in a house, golf was on, and people coming in the house and going, "Hey, how's Tiger doing?" That is my relationship with golf. Okay, I'm trying. I think I'm going to pick it up next spring, but it's not. I don't know all this lingo. Now, you talk basketball, I got you. I'm your guy. Football, I'm your guy. Golf, don't ask me questions. Okay.
Think of it as like if you want to go NBA terms, like think of it as like game 3. Series tied 1-1, it's game 3.
Yes.
Team who wins game 3 wins the series a whole lot of times in that situation.
I was even going to say post All-Star break, because that's when things get real, because you're starting to build up towards the postseason, right? A lot of the load management stuff, you're not really doing that anymore. It's time to start locking in because it's almost a playoff. That's where we're at now. They play football at the end of this month. And because of who the team is, I think there is a lack of patience in terms of repeated mistakes and not growing on a day-to-day basis. So I hope this isn't turning into a Ethan and Yawa is not good. They're in trouble. No. We're just trying to decode why 5 practices in, Ryan Day decided to tell us that Austin Saravel's been repping that left tackle and Ethan Inyawa's been working all over the place. While in the spring, Ethan Inyawa wasn't working anywhere but at left tackle. And
he was the only one in the spring who wasn't working anywhere else.
He was. And the reason why that has been said is because there is a sense of urgency, because there is a potential number 1, number 2 matchup in week 1. They have to hit the ground running, which is why Ryan Day is talking about the quarterback position the way he's talking about it, why he's talking about the offensive line the way he's talking about that, and why he'll talk about everything else, whether it's Brian Hartline as a play caller, Matt Patricia and getting this defense installed. It's another example of the sense of urgency, and he used the offensive line and the quarterbacks today to re-emphasize that point, that they are not playing Akron week 1 like they did last year, or Florida Atlantic in week 1 like they did in 2019. They are playing a Notre Dame 2022 level type of opponent in week 1. So they have to be ready for that, or they will lose. And they need Ethan Inyawa to be ready. He is on a short list of guys. We're going to do a pod of like the most important people in this game. I think Ethan Inyawa should be on that list of people that they need to be ready for that game, because it's not another. I'm not saying there's not another option, but he's the best option because you went and got him out of the transfer portal to go do this.
Yeah, and if we were covering Texas, this is probably how we would talk about the number 1 corner.
Yes.
Because that dude's got to stop Jeremiah Smith. Now, obviously, there's going to be a bit of a team effort to try to slow down Jeremiah Smith, but that's where it starts, right? Like, we can say, Will Kazmarik's going to help out in blocking Colin Simmons. Well, it starts with Ethan Onyanyawa.
Yep.
And we'll figure it out after there. Like, it starts with Texas's number 1 corner, and then you figure it out from there. So, like, everything you said is spot on. And on top of it, Ethan Onyanyawa is probably having to stop potentially the number 2 pick behind Jeremiah Smith in the 2020.
Mm-hmm. So that's
maybe even he goes before Jeremiah because of positional value.
Are the number 1 and number 2 overall picks in the 2027 NFL draft playing?
Yeah, because Arch Manning is going to wait until 20.
Number 1, number 2, number 3 picks in the 2027 NFL draft playing?
Can I say something?
Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4.
614-350-3315. 2-week free trial. $3.99 after that. It's a 2-week free trial. I promise it's a great time. We were texting a lot on Tuesday. There was a lot of good information and more to come. We've got linebackers and running backs later this week as Ohio State continues to prepare for the 2025 season against Texas. There's a clear sense of urgency given the level of the opponent for week 1. For Stefan, Krajisnik, and Andrew Gillis, I'm Stephen Means, and that was Buckeye Talk.